Hi there, welcome to Departures Lounge. We're really excited today to be interviewing another really great tour company or travel company. And first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kathy Scott from Departures Travel. And on with us today is Kathy Larson, the co-owner of Departures Travel in Sydney. And we have Lisa Bain from Lindblad Expeditions, and super excited to also have with us a gentleman who dives in the cold waters of the world with Lindblad Expeditions, and that's James Hyde. So super excited to share this really amazing product with you today. And we hope that you really enjoy it. So Lisa, take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Kathy and Kathy. So yeah, look, Lindblad. For some reason, I was muted again. I wanted to make sure that I showed you a little bit about where we go in the world. So we travel to all 7 continents, from Antarctica to the Arctic, and we do it on these really remarkable, smaller, intimate expedition vessels. I mean, the biggest ship we have is only 148 guests, and this really gorgeous ship you see here, the National Geographic Endurance, which only joined us last March, is only 126 guests. So for us, it is about intimacy of exploration. It's about getting into all those little nooks and crannies and really being able to get off the ship and spend our time in the destinations. And it all stems from one gentleman you see on the left here, which is Lars Erik Lindblad. And Lars Erik was an explorer in his own right. And he, back in the early 60s, was traveling and realized these amazing places he was going to were already suffering wildlife loss, habitat degradation. And so he wanted to take like-minded fellow travelers with him so that they could see these places. He could impassion them so that they would come back and be a voice for their preservation. And that's really, to this day, why we step off on these amazing expeditions around the world. Now, his son, Sven Lindblad, who you see on the right, has been at the helm of the company now for over 40 years. And Sven has grown us from one little red ship that took that very first expedition to Antarctica back in 1966. Think of that. That was the first trip ever undertaken with guests to Antarctica, 66. And Sven has grown us now to nearly 15 vessels as of this year. He's also created some really amazing alliances. And the one that we are most renowned for is our alliance with the National Geographic Society. And that started back in 2004. And it means we have these amazing guests, or special guests on our ships, gives us access to remarkable men and women from around the world to help our guests understand and interpret what they're seeing. But it also allows us to provide funding and support to the National Geographic Society and the remarkable programs that they undertake around the planet. Now, our expedition teams are pretty diverse. They're ornithologists, botanists, marine biologists. We've got ethnomusicologists in some places. But the really cool thing about these men and women is their ability to share their passion for these places that we travel, and their approachability, right? They are there 24/7 to help you understand and to get the most out of these amazing destinations. We also have some really cool tools, and I'm going to let James go into these in a little bit more detail because he uses most of these in the field. But for us, it's important that we give that full 360-degree view of the places we're visiting and allow you to be in the water where it's warmer, like the South Pacific, on the water, so you've got that water level access and bird's eye view of the wildlife that we're experiencing. One of the really cool things is our photography program on board. On many of our ships, we have a National Geographic photographer in residence or a Lindblad certified photo instructor. And their job is to be there to support you in the field so you can take home some of the best photography of your lives. And that's from SLRs down to cell phones. A lot of our guests now use cell phones, and they're very capable of taking some remarkable photography. We also have a B&H photo locker on many of our ships, and that's complimentary. But each evening you can go and check out a professional lens or maybe a mirrorless camera and do some trial work with those in the field. A lot of fun. Sustainability has been at the heart and the very core of everything we've done since the beginning of Lindblad Expeditions. And so that's a really key part of everything that we do and every decision we make. We are a carbon neutral company. We've eradicated single-use plastics from our ships. We use sustainable cuisine on all of our ships as well, and multiple programs in all of the places that we visit to support research and programs protecting wildlife and working with local communities. One of the cool things that we did back in 2019, before COVID actually came along, was we became the world's first fleet of self-disinfecting ships. What does that mean? It means we have this really cool system that is sprayed on every surface of our ships, and it is a photocatalytic spray which kills virus on contact. So what that was allowing us to do was, decrease or reduce guest reported illnesses on our ships. It eliminated toxins, also potential allergens for our guests. It reduced water usage. We don't have to carry as much water on our fleets. And it removed plastic bottles, which was one of the key components of introducing the program. As I said, our cuisine on board is wonderful, but it is always sustainable. We want to buy local, support local producers and farmers, and bring those flavors into the experience on our ships. And one of the best seats in the house is going to be our bridge. We have an open bridge policy. And so whenever you're traveling with Lindblad, this is where you want to get up early, go spend time with the captain and his team, maybe go up in the evenings. It's great for wildlife spotting, but just really learning about the places and the oceans and seas that you're covering. One of my favorite parts, and I'm so excited we have James with us this evening. On Lindblad, we have our underwater specialists, because when you're on a ship, 50% of what you want to experience, or what we want you to experience, is under the ship. And so we want to open up that marine biodiversity beneath us so you understand it and how it affects everything around us. And so people like James are in the water and they're supporting you and bringing back this amazing footage. So without further ado, the man that we've all come to listen to this evening is James. He's from Vashon Island in the Pacific Northwest. He was on the shore of Seattle. He's educated in the schools and the tide pools of that whole region there of the Salish Sea. He's a really passionate communicator. You're so going to enjoy everything he has to share with you this evening. He's also one of our photo instructors. So when he's not diving, he can assist you with your photography on board our ships as well. And he has logged hundreds of polar dives. So without further ado, James, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yep, that's me. I'm James, and welcome all. And to the land side here, let me take you a little bit digitally and imagination-wise out on board some of our vessels. Like Lisa said, 50% of what you're going to experience, is going to be below the waterline. So it's my charge and my passion to help communicate that to everyone. So what we'll do is we'll just take a brief overview of the oceans and seas and some of the divisions of it. And I'll tell you a little bit about why it really sparks my curiosity and hopefully piques some interest of yours as well. Getting to, okay, I should preface this all to say, we don't offer a whole lot of guest diving on board our fleet, but there is some of it available. But trust me, in Antarctica, you don't want to get in that water. It's an emergency if you do, but I'm happy to go there on your behalf. So let's take a look here. Welcome to Planet Ocean. And that is something I'm sure you've heard before, maybe a platitude, perhaps not. But it really is a whole ocean. And what you're looking at here is an animation of the Great Ocean Conveyor Belt. What is that? There are deep and surface currents moving along all ocean basins that actually manage to transport all water that exists on Earth, in the seas at least, all over the globe. So we talk about the 5 major oceans, the 5 ocean basins, and that all has a basis in science, but the water moves all over. It only takes a couple of centuries, which is nothing geologically, right, for water to circulate around the entire globe. It's incredibly well traveled. So anytime you sort of think of the seas and the ocean basins, I want you to come back to the idea that it really is just one ocean, and we get to explore it in different places. And I love to convey the mysteries that some of it holds for you. There are certain kinds of lines and divisions and neighborhoods in the sea, if you will. A big one, perhaps the most important one is a temperature variation. And what you're looking at here is, of course, Antarctica, but what is much more interesting is the color that you're seeing. And this is, of course, representing temperature. And temperature speaks a lot more to it. Generally follows productivity and nutrients, oxygen level. So you can see it's a really very clear line running around. That is the artificial border of the Southern Ocean. So that's part of the neighborhoods, perhaps, of our great ocean. Now, it's not a flat ocean either, and it's certainly not, and you'll know that if you ever go out on the Drake Passage with us, it can be a little bumpy sometimes. But on the surface, that's nothing compared to what is lying below. It's incredibly topographically diverse at the bottom of the sea as well. Right in the center of the screen, you're looking at the longest mountain chain on Earth. That's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge running right through the center there. Under the water, there are absolutely massive peaks, and there are some cavernous valleys as well. The Haddle Zone, the deep trenches. There are deep trenches in every basin of the ocean, and the mysteries down there are multiple. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's easier to get to outer space than it is to get down to the bottom of the ocean. There are also highways in the seas. What you're looking at here is a couple of perhaps well-known ocean highways. Down at the bottom of your screen, that's the equatorial countercurrent. You can see it's moving quite quickly. And of course, off the coast of North America on the east side, we have the Gulf Stream. And that perhaps is best described as an oceanic river. It is absolutely moving along so quickly. It brings all that warm water that was warmed up by the sun in the low latitudes of the Gulf of Mexico, sends it straight off towards Europe, moderating their climate. So we're really responsible for it in a certain way. And so what do we do to help communicate this other half of the world? Well, we spend a heck of a lot of time getting dressed for it. You have to dress to impress the ocean. In the cold regions, most definitely. This is me putting on a dry suit, and you have to bring a lot of gear down there with you. There's no shortage, no less rather than 300 pounds of equipment in that Zodiac, minus the people. And it's a heck of a lot of work. It's incredibly cold, but the payoff is that you are on these remarkable platforms, the National Geographic Explorer, and you get to witness some of the underwater reaches that you can pretty much guarantee no one has seen before. We don't have dive plans, really. We don't have pins of where to go. We just pick a point on the chart and go for it. And I slowed this down for you because I wanted you to see the moment of instant regret when that 28.5-degree water washes around my head. It is quite an experience. But eventually, your face goes numb and your hands go numb, and it's really quite a pleasant place to be for about half an hour before it really sinks in again. But that half an hour, you are likely to find some of the most amazing creatures in incredible colors. Look at the colors you're seeing here. This is what Antarctica looks like below the waves. Incredibly vibrant for a monochromatic land. Now, that is not our only way of discovering what's underwater. We have our robotic ambassadors that we are the masters of on board. The undersea specialists will pilot these remotely operated vehicles, that's ROV, and they are tethered. They have a line coming off them, but they're essentially underwater drones. And they can go much deeper for much longer and cover a greater distance than we can on scuba. You can see we're 272 feet below the surface. This particular model can go down to 1,000 feet. And that's well below where light reaches in these regions. And it's our pleasure to take a look down there. We also have a couple of low-tech solutions for communicating the underwater environment. Something as simple as a camera on a stick can reveal some incredibly beautiful scenes. But something that's happening right off the side of one of our expedition landing craft could be something that you might only find in an incredibly high-produced nature documentary, and it's happening right there. If you want to know what king penguins look like when they're swimming, or when they get a curiosity about something new in their environment, this is what it looks like. And we are absolutely thrilled to have these tools and to have these encounters and bring them back to share with the guests on board. Now, there's another very small community, but it is no less interesting than the penguins and the seals and everything else, and this is the plankton community. What you're looking at here is a standard plankton net. We tow this behind one of our little expedition landing craft, and from there, whatever we capture slides into the plastic case at the back, that's called the cod end, and water strains out the mesh on the sides. Now, what we can do with this is tow it behind one of our boats at a varying amount of depth. We can tow it directly straight up and down to capture whatever's in the water column. And when we do that, we often bring whatever we find in the cod end there back on board. And we have some incredibly beautiful microscopes, and the undersea specialist and the expedition diver will generally host people up there and just say, hey, come up, take a look through the microscope and look at this weird thing we found. Another configuration we can use for the plankton net is what you're looking at here. On the left side of your screen, you can see the net off the side of the boat there, and that's clipped off to hover about halfway in the water. And we can drag it across as a skim. This will let us see what is floating on the surface, what is not suspended in the water column. You'll find some interesting life there. You'll find feathers and other things floating about. But this also allows us to contribute to our citizen science program. We sample for microplastics this way, and we go to some incredibly hard to reach areas. So it really is part of our duty to help sample and contribute what we can to the science of all of these beautiful places. Really, what you find in the plankton nets can be absolutely dazzling. And if you shrink your imagination down to the size that you're dealing with, there really are some incredible monsters to be seen. This is one of my favorite plankton. You won't see it like this under a microscope, but we do encounter them in the water column and are happy to film and bring back the footage. This is a comb jelly, or a ctenophore. And it's thought that these are actually the original animals on Earth, not the jellyfish that we're familiar with, more like the comb jelly. It's not emitting that light, it's just refracting it, I should say. This is a sea angel, another member of the plankton community, and you can see why it gets its name, but don't be fooled by the angelic prose. It's actually a ferocious predator that will open its head to engulf members of its own species. It's a horrifying little existence down there as a plankton. I certainly wouldn't want it for myself, but it is incredibly interesting. Now, if we follow all the way down to the bottom, perhaps we take our ROVs to explore the benthos, the benthic community, we find even more strange forms of life. And we're perhaps 500 to 600 to 700 feet below the surface of Antarctica right now, and there are absolute monsters about. This sea star or sun star actually hunts for little fish. That's why its arm is up like that. This is a feather star crawling on top of another animal, Gorgonian. These are all animals that you're looking at here. There's not a plant among them. While many of them exhibit sort of a similar growth pattern as plants, there's no light down here. In fact, Most of these creatures will never have seen light at all. No reason for them to. We do find some familiar faces down there. This is a Antarctic starry skate, an elasmobranch related to sharks and rays. It's very, very cold, so we can get quite close without disturbing it. It's reluctant to move. And traveling in between the surface and the bottom layer are the commuters. This is the planktonic community that will rise and fall with each passing day, spending the daylight hours deep in the dark, hiding from predators in swarms of huge, huge numbers. What you're looking at here is Euphausia superba. That's the Antarctic krill. And this is the most remarkable species. Not shrimp, don't be confused. They are more closely related to crabs, actually. Small crustaceans. They just feed everything in Antarctica. This little individual right here that I was fortunate enough to find on its own to get some really detailed, intimate looks at. This is what all those penguins, all the seals, all the whales are in Antarctica for. This is the main staple of everything.
James, how big would those be?
They can be, they're big. They're some of the largest krill species. There's many different species of krill, but these ones can be several inches long. This particular one was maybe 4 inches. That's very big for a plankton. So we have all kinds of techniques, and of course we just don't go to cold places. We could do an aquarium shot, and perhaps a curious fish will come over to see a camera nestled in a coral reef. We could also be out diving and encounter an enormous school of grunts. This is in Cabo Pulmo, Mexico, an incredibly successful story of marine conservation. We could witness daring acts of escape and survival in the underwater world. I will give a little bit of a spoiler that Chinstrap escaped once, but not twice from that leopard seal. We could come face to face with other top predators, once again back in Mexico, and this is the bull shark. There are several bull sharks swimming around the divers in this instance. There's a sharp look at a male. It is really thought that the bull shark was perhaps the inspiration for Jaws and not the great white. And we may have beautiful and intimate views of some of the divers' favorite animals on Earth. The octopus has really wiggled its way into a lot of people's hearts recently, thanks in no small part to that documentary on Netflix, My Octopus Teacher. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. Really gives a great look into the lives of these very charismatic, beautiful, intelligent, and bizarre animals. To think that this creature has 8 arms, 3 hearts, a little bit of brain in each arm, can change its color and texture at will due to the mineral content of its blood. It has blue and green blood. I mean, it's just crazy. Watch it change color here and inflate and move on. What it's doing now, boom, is trying to capture something on the reef. Octopus generally hunt at night, but we found this incredibly sociable animal, and after a little bit of handshaking, realized we weren't a threat. We may have other beautiful looks at some incredibly elegant creatures of the water as well. This is in the Falkland Islands. These are Peale's dolphins. And what they're doing right here is just escorting our little Zodiac boats to and from shore. We think they have a great time doing it. We've tried to ask them, but they don't tend to respond. But it's wonderful to look into their world. And sometimes the underwater world looks back. These are South American sea lions, big males. They're not at all afraid of the divers here. They're incredibly curious, and it's really something to interact with an animal and have it look back. This is South American fur seal, and they're incredibly adept underwater creatures as well, and they're capable of underwater fireworks. It's just the most incredible display of bubble prowess I've ever seen. Isn't that beautiful? So it really is our pleasure and passion to share the underwater world of the incredible places we go. And I absolutely am so excited to do it. So please, if you have any questions about anything you've seen, do type it in and I'll be happy to answer it.
Thank you, James. I'm just monitoring the Facebook feed to see if anybody is asking a question. I think they're all like jaws are on the floor right now, actually. They're all commenting that unbelievably beautiful and wonderful. Yeah, so.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally, I'm in favor of the warm water, but yeah. It's absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. So thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait for us to share Lindblad with our clients and take them on a cold water or a warm water dive. Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely,
Lisa
it's been my
as well,
pleasure.
and to James. Yeah, so we've got to thank you, James. Yeah, everybody just really loved it. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having us, and we look forward to welcoming your guests on board.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Next week we are going to the other end of the world, and we're going to Scotland, and we have a group of very unruly Scottish people, and we're going to be celebrating Robbie Burns Day. So join us next week, and it's going to be at 2:30 to accommodate the time difference. So we'll see you then. And thanks again, James and Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.